Oh, President Ziegler, we are still waiting on Manager Crafton. Manager Pedersen was in Alaska and she was non-committal if she would have adequate connection to join us or not, but we are still waiting on Manager Crafton.
Okay. We should have music.
Sure.
Is she logging in now? Can you tell?
Oh, yep, here she comes.
Okay.
And there she is. Manager Crafton. Manager Crafton, are you with us?
Mr. President, one other option, since you do have a quorum, is you could call the meeting to order and begin, and she could join us in progress, if you wish.
That sounds good. Apparently she's having technical issues. The time, according to my computer, is 7:04. I'd like to call the Board of Manager meeting to order. I think we probably want to do a roll call vote because we're having the meeting via Zoom out of an abundance of caution over the COVID pandemic. Terry, do you want to go ahead and take attendance?
President Ziegler, if you don't mind, I would like to ask Mr. Smith to do it. I'm in a hotel room in Tofty and I'm not real confident in my connection.
Okay. Mr. Smith?
On attendance, Manager Crafton. Come back.
Here, present.
Okay. Manager Duval.
Present.
Manager Cook.
Present.
Manager Pedersen. Absent with notice. President Ziegler.
Present.
There are 4 managers present.
Okay, so the first item on the agenda is the public hearing on the proposed 2024 annual budget and levy. Terry.
Mr. President, point of order.
Manager Cook.
I would move that we adopt the agenda first and that we make the public hearing the second order of business after adopting the agenda.
I'm not sure why it was put the other way. Is there any reason not to change it?
No, there is no reason not to change it.
Okay, so I'll second the motion to approve before the public hearing. A motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments?
Yes, Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I would like to move items 9B through 9G to the action items.
Okay, so you're kind of combining the motion to change the order of the first two items and then to move items 9B through 9G to action items.
That is correct, Mr. President.
Okay. Anything else?
No, Mr. President, not for me.
Mr. President, just as a clarification, if I might,
Yes, Mr. Smith.
as item 9 is the action item of business, I wonder if the intention is to move item 7, the consent agenda items.
Mr. President?
Manager Cook?
Yes, I misspoke. I was already looking at my schedule where I had moved them to 9, which is the action items. Yes, Mr. Smith is correct. It would be moving 7, actually items 7B through 7G to as action items under item 9A. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Okay. Comments or other proposed changes to the agenda?
Mr. President,
Mr. Smith?
I would like to request adding, I guess, under legal counsel report, under item 11C, a report to the board on the state of Minnesota by Spring Valley Friends versus Riley Purgatory Bluff Creek Watershed District. And give you a report on that.
Okay. Okay, any other requests for changes to the agenda?
Mr. President?
Manager Cook?
Time permitting, I have some items to report under item 11. I guess, is it 11? And my numbering is a little messed up here. Under member reports, under manager reports, I have something to be said, but that'll be depend on the time that we get to it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, can we have a roll call vote on approving the agenda as revised?
Manager Crafton,
She has disappeared again. She just texted me that she's having technical difficulties. Staff Lockney, could you send her a number to call in, please?
Sure.
Text me. Thank you.
Manager Crafton absent, Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
The motion carries 3-0 with managers Crafton and Pedersen absent.
Okay, so the first or the next thing on the agenda is the public hearing. Proposed 2024 annual budget and levy. Administrator Jeffrey, are you going to take us through this?
Yeah. Let me see if we can share my screen here. All right. So, President Ziegler, managers should be showing up now. This is just the 2024 budget and levy. As we discussed at our August meeting, as well as the July work session beforehand, the proposed levy is $4.05 roughly $1 million with a proposed budget of $6.5 million. The levy increase would amount to 6% over the 2023 budget. The bulk of that increase is monies set aside for opportunity project. There's also included within the budget finances for hiring of 2 positions, one being somebody to help out E&O, and the other being someone to help out data collection. And the rest of it is to the projects that were specified in the 10-year plan, with some changes to schedule.
Okay, do we have any questions or comments on the proposed 2024 budget and levy?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
so I believe we had some discussion regarding the, yes, thank you for increasing the size of that, about the opportunity project line item. And I would like, again, a summary as to what changes were made to the other items in the budget in order to accommodate that amount, because I believe that amount was an increase over what was originally proposed.
President Ziegler, Manager Cook, yes, that was a $320,000 increase over what was originally proposed for opportunity projects. What has resulted because of this, the adjustments made to the schedule are that the Upper Riley Creek project, rather than beginning this fall, will begin next year. Upper Bluff Creek project will be pushed out an additional year so that it'll be a 24-25 beginning time. In addition to that, the Lotus Lake alum treatment was pushed back from 2023 to 2024. And the ancillary benefit of that is that I believe the U of M phase 2 study will be completed by then, giving us more information for that. In addition, a project on Red Rock Lake, as well as a project on Mitchell Lake, were moved out to the end of the 5-year schedule. So a 2028, 2027, 2028 timeline, as opposed to, I believe it was 2026 and 2027 for those. Those were the changes made to accommodate the schedule.
And so I guess, and then, so correct me if I'm wrong though, is that as long as we don't go over our total budgeted amount, we have the ability to reallocate funds among the various categories or projects. Am I correct?
President Ziegler, Manager Cook, that is correct, with the board resolution to reallocate funds. As long as it's identified in the plan or the plan is adjusted to accommodate that, we would be able to do so. President Ziegler, Manager Cook, one more item that has changed as well as a result of this. There was $100,000 that was going to be in next year's, or excuse me, in the 25 budget for groundwater. Nope, it was next year. For next year's groundwater, that was eliminated for next year. We have adequate funds in there right now for any preliminary planning that we want to do with that. So that was the other significant change.
If I can continue, so the one question that I have, and I know that this is an item later on, but I think it impacts the budget, is the addition of personnel And as I read it, and correct me if I'm wrong, as I read it, one of the jobs was having to do with groundwater. And if we are delaying, spending money on groundwater, my question is, do we really need to add an additional person in that position at this time?
President Ziegler, Manager Cook. The job description, a part of it was for the groundwater. As we'll discuss later on, the current education and outreach person, their job description will be broadened to include grant coordination, and the position will be communication specialist that will work with our GIS, our online mapping, things that are currently farmed out to BOM Engineering on our behalf, and will provide support to our communications as well as our education outreach, our grant, and our soils program. So yes, we still do have need for that position. Groundwater was just one part of that position. GIS will be taking over that aspect of the position in terms of commitment.
Excuse me, and GIS being the mapping?
Excuse me, yes, geographic information system. So everything from going out and utilizing our survey equipment to capturing data to managing our databases for our mapping to creating web-based maps, such as online map of projects, online map of permits, etc. So that information will be available online through our website.
And if I might just continue with one additional question, who is and who will be responsible for our website and for our record keeping?
Record keeping as it pertains to what in particular?
Well, first of all, record keeping such that in accordance with the Bowser rules is readily accessible to individuals wanting the information. And I think in particular, making sure that the website can provide as much reasonable access to our documentation as possible. Again, I believe in keeping with the rules or the position set forth in the rules adopted, by Bowser. I don't have to repeat this, but in case somebody else is on here haven't heard me speak before, I think that our website, although a good start on refreshing a website, needs significant work in making documentation available and organizing it. And so I want to know, basically, are we having a person being dedicated to do that? Because I have on a number of occasions expressed issues, with the website, also expressed issues with the organization of our files accessible online. And in my view, they need quite a bit of work. And just one example that I recall off the top of my head is we go to the recordings of meetings. One, I'm not sure they're all there, and two, they're in an order which is pretty difficult to follow. They're not necessarily chronological order. If I recall, I think I went to it yesterday. So I'm looking to have who is responsible or who will be responsible for making sure that our record keeping and the interaction with the website is going to be consistent with the Bowser rules.
The communication manager is overall responsible for the website, although there are different tasks within website management that falls to different people depending upon the type of data being presented.
I would hope that we would have an operating procedure to make it clear who's responsible for which, and who overall can supervise this, because I don't see what I believe is needed to be done getting done, in that regard. So I would hope that if we're adding two people, that one of these people is going to assist in getting that done, because I've already said I believe we're lacking in that position. A final question was, is are both of these positions included in the line item for salaries or otherwise?
President Ziegler, Manager Cook, yes.
Okay, so all the anticipated personnel, if we fill these positions, all their expenses, benefits, etc., are reflected in the budget or the proposed budget as you put forward.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have at this time. Thank you.
Manager DeVal, did you have any questions or comments?
No, President Ziegler.
President Ziegler?
Manager Crafton?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any concerns that Bowser would have with us. We can certainly check in with our board conservationist, Steve Christopher, but my understanding is we're in compliance.
Thank you. And one question, just clarification on the groundwater conservation. There still is money carried over from prior years, right?
That is correct, President Ziegler. We have a carryover from previous years of, is that this one here? Let me, which
5,000?
No, it's four. Here it is. So the carryover is $4,400,000 is the carryover from past levies.
That's
And-
total project, so that's not just groundwater, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
But-
This is either projects that were anticipated to have been spent more on this year that have not, or multi-year projects for which we have levied but have not begun the projects.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I have one follow-up in that regard, since the groundwater item was raised. I don't recall us having, adopted a policy regarding groundwater. My recollection is that the topic has somewhat been an orphan child, given the fact that I believe groundwater is significantly controlled by the state and the cities. And so I think that, it would be time, if one exists, I would appreciate seeing a copy of a policy, and it would probably be appropriate to end up with a policy regarding groundwater and what our role in groundwater is going to be or is.
President Ziegler?
That's just my final comment.
President Ziegler?
Administrator Jeffrey?
Yeah, Manager Cook, yes, that's exactly correct. It is identified in our 10-year plan as a priority that we need to develop a policy of a program of how we want to address it, and that was what the money was originally allocated for. The first $100,000 was to set up that planning effort and any data collection that's necessary as a part of that.
Mr. President,
Manager
sorry,
Cook?
one final item. I'll mention this. I got a copy of the public notice, at least as it was published one time in the Chanhassen Villager. So number one, I want to commend the form of the notice was much better than last year's, which I've already stated I believe was inadequate. This one, I believe, appears to me to be adequate, but I do have one issue in that, and perhaps I'm wrong. I don't recall that we authorized the publication of the notice. And if I'm wrong, could somebody please provide me with the resolution or the meeting minutes where we authorized the publication of the budget? That's the last of my comments. Thank you.
Administrator Jeffrey?
Yes, I can make those available.
Okay. So I didn't see that we have a motion or a pre-printed resolution for this. Is that, do we have
At this time, no, we were just taking public comment. Later on in the meeting, we have a resolution for the adoption of the budget
Okay.
dissemination to the counties.
Okay. So if there's no other further questions at this time, we can close the public hearing and move on to the next item on the agenda.
We should see if there are members of the public that would like to speak on it. There are a few members of the public I see here tonight.
Okay. So do any members of the public who are attending tonight have any questions or comments on the budget and levy for 2024? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item. So we've already approved the agenda. So the next item is reading and approval of the minutes of the August 2nd regular meeting of the Board of Managers. Do we have any motions on this item?
I'll move the minutes as submitted, but I do have some edits.
Okay, I'll second the motion. Manager Crafton, you have some edits.
Yeah, page 7, line 146. Says Manager Cook to adopt. I think he meant moved to adopt. Page 13, line 299. Whack is spelled wrong. Did that get corrected, Terry?
It has not. Yep, nope, it has not. So WACA should be WCA as opposed to WACA.
That was in 2 places, so I've got I don't know if both of those got done, but page 14, 336, line 336.
Yep, 336 is there. We can do a fine.
Yep, it was the same one. Yep, Wacka. Okay.
Okay, does anyone else have any corrections to the agenda? I'm sorry, to the minutes?
Mr. President.
Mr. Smith.
Yes, I have several suggested changes with apologies from Mr. Welch for not getting them in sooner. On page 2, at lines 8 and 9, revise it to read conversation going on between Michael Welch, President David Ziegler, and Terry Jeffrey, and then delete the remainder of the sentence about more than a majority of managers were present. And then at line 37 on the same page, insert, so that it would read, for Attorney Welch to talk about the delegation memo, and insert the words "and resolution." And then at line 40, continuing on, received it in the previous meeting packet And then insert, and Mr. Jeffrey emailed the draft resolution to the managers this morning. And on to late in the minutes. Bear with me 1 second. Yes, on page 18. Lines 454 through 466. Delete that information. Other than it would read, Mr. Welch said that Minnesota Court of Appeals on Monday released its decision on the appeal from Spring Valley Friends to that court in the matter of contesting the district's issuance of a permit for the no development. Mr. Welch said that the court upheld the district court's dismissal of the challenge, and then that would be the summary. No further changes.
Thank you. Administrator Jeffrey, you made a note of those changes and corrections.
President Ziegler, yes, I have a copy of those notes that were mailed to me by Council Welch earlier this afternoon.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the August 2nd regular meeting Board of Manager minutes?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I don't want to beat a dead horse, but you know, we've gone over this before that we had adopted a process of getting the minutes out and having comments back. Basically, I believe it was 10 days, and you know, we're not doing that, and it ends up, you know, I think being, you know, a waste of time. And I, for one, if I don't get to them, which I didn't this time around, I just plan to abstain. But then again, my recollection is we didn't get these until it was part of the package. So I just want to reiterate, I think it would be in everybody's interest that we follow the procedure that we previously adopted, get the minutes out and get them reviewed and comments back. And that it would be beneficial then that we would be getting a markup of the minutes to be included in the packet. I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. Attorney Smith, can we have a roll call vote on reading and approval of the August 2nd regular meeting that includes the continuation of the meeting on August 17th?
Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Abstain.
Manager Pedersen, absent. President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 3-1 or 3-0 with 1 abstention and 1 absence.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the August 17th Board of Managers Workshop. Do we have any motions on this item?
President, I move that we accept the minutes of the August 17th workshop session.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments on the August 17th Board of Manager Work Session minutes?
President Ziegler.
Manager Crafton?
It seemed to me that some of Manager Pedersen's points weren't included. Because I remember we talked about HOAs, and she talked about how they had, by putting in, it was pollinator gardens, I think, or rain gardens anyway, by doing better landscaping, so they didn't have to mow and water, et cetera, they saved $60,000. So I don't know if that's irrelevant, but that seemed a significant point to me as part of the discussion, so. I just wanted to point that out.
Administrator Jeffrey, can you check or have someone check the video and put the quote in?
Mr. President, point of order.
Manager Cook?
Well, I move that if there's concerns that the minutes accurately reflect the meeting, I move that we table this item for our next meeting and give Manager Pedersen the opportunity to review it and make comments as to whether or not she has any comments that she believes should have been included.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second to table and wait.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion or comments? Okay, Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote on delaying the approval of the work session minutes until we can get, well, it'd be to the next manager's regular meeting.
Yes, the motion to table. Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen absent, President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0 with one absence.
Okay, that brings us to the committee reports. The first item on the committee reports is receiving the Citizens Advisory Committee reports and minutes. Do we have a representative here today to talk on that subject?
Ziegler's, Ms. McConnor is here to speak on.
All right, well, thank you. Our last meeting was, we kind of looked at it broken up into 3 different components. The first was a terrific presentation from Elena on the, I'm sure I butchered her name, on our Green Corps member on her project. We were very excited about it and interested to hear about what a great baseline it's going to provide for us. So that was pretty cool, and it was a great project. And then the second group was Liz and Eleanor came and talked to us about, give us updates on a lot of the projects and then some future initiatives that we had questions about. So it was really a good chance for us to get some clarification on some things that maybe people had seen but just wanted more information on. And then the third part was we spent a bit of time on, if you remember back earlier this spring, we came to you and we had some questions about some motions we had brought as the CAC in the past. And we know you can't do anything the day of the meeting, but we had some questions as to the disposition of those items. So at the time when we talked to you, in all fairness, you said, you got to remind us because we got a lot going on and we need to know. So we kind of loosely suggested that we would go back, look through our motions, get kind of a status of them, feel which ones we still had that we felt were open, and then bring those back to you. And so Marilyn did a great job. She went through and had record of all the motions. And then Bonnie put it together into an Excel spreadsheet. We haven't had a time as a group to meet officially. We've done some things through email with that, but the spreadsheet is really just a draft because we really want your input and we need everybody on the CAC's input, but we didn't want to waste another month, basically. So tonight, a couple things. That list is on the CAC Google Drive and it's under motions. And so if you have any input on what's there, are there columns missing? Is there more information you want? Then if you can get back to us, that would be great, because we're kind of to a point, our next meeting is next week and we're going to be talking about it and maybe, I don't want to say finalizing it without your input, but we're going to be making it more as a group effort. because it's been with a smaller group of people right now. And we want to make sure everybody's on board with it. Everyone is on, let me say this, everyone's on board with getting updates on the motions. It's the process and the form that we're still talking about. So when we went through the list, the good news was it was a long list and there were only 3 things outstanding. And so the 3 that we have are, Terry, you had come to us when you were working, we had suggested you get a presentation to us when you were reviewing the rules. And we had suggested maybe that you work with other watersheds so that all the watersheds know when everybody's reviewing their rules, because I think that's what you accomplished this time, was to make sure that they were reviewing the rules and that everything was in sync. And so a suggestion was just made that that be part of the plan, that the board allow time for you or for whoever to set that up as a practice. So that was the first one. The second one was to adopt a definition of steep slopes. So that was another one. And the hope was that if you needed that definition to apply to the Frederick Miller site, you could use it for that. If not, at least then we'd have it done. So in the future, when it comes up, it's done and it doesn't have to be, started at that point in time. So, so I think those are the 3. I don't know if you have updates on those tonight. If not, maybe we could get updates next time, and then maybe talk about, how you want to, I don't know how we necessarily approach it. This is so early in your meeting. You've got hours and hours to go yet. We don't want to spend a lot of time derailing, but we might need to have some kind of a process so that we can find out what the updates are. And I don't know if we meet with a couple managers offline and a couple people on our group, and we kind of talk about how that process should work. But it feels like we need both sides at the table. So 2 things, the 3 things that are open tonight and then going forward. Administrator Jeffrey, did you have any, I know you like the idea of working with the other watersheds, but on that one, I don't know if that's something you do or if the managers have to direct you to do it, or.
President Ziegler,
Administrator Jeffrey.
managers. So we now have a Metro-wide regulatory working group that meets. They've been meeting quarterly, and as well as needed. As far as aligning all of the rules, there are certain districts, especially those that are share a common border, that have the most recent one being South Washington and Capital Region have aligned theirs. We have worked with 9 Mile Creek as much as possible to keep ours in alignment. The rest of it, there is some difficulties just because of the plan schedules, having everybody's on a different 10-year plan schedule. But the Tory Working Group has been a really great opportunity for exchange of ideas, issues that people are confronting, and solutions to those issues. In particular, the soil protection has been discussed at those, and what we came out of it was it's all over the place. Some watershed districts are really trying to do something, and others it's not even on their radar. So some of these are really just trying to plant seeds and getting a consensus on what's out there and important. So I'm hoping that through this regulatory working group that we will find more common ground and consensus among the different districts.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook.
I don't want to interrupt Sharon here, but I just had a comment that it brought up about the Metro Working Group, and I had a question of whether or not the group issues minutes of their meetings, and if so, would that be something that could be circulated to us managers, who at least who have an interest in rulemaking?
President Ziegler, Manager Cook, to my knowledge, there are not minutes. There's sometimes notes that are sent around. Really, the end product or the finished deliverable product is a SharePoint folder where people who might have rules or forms or something related to it will share their items on that site. I can certainly provide updates to the managers in administrative report after those meetings have occurred. Would that be an issue at all?
And Mr. President, yeah, I think that would be a good idea if that was included as part of your staff report. So we just have an idea who's talking about what, and rules is a topic that I will discuss if we have the time to get to it when I have my manager's report discussion. Thank you. I'm sorry, Sharon, for interrupting.
Oh, that's okay. It's great news to hear you're being able to work proactively with them. And if you're talking to them, I'm sure they're telling you, yeah, we're getting ready to do a big rules review. And that was, I think, the only thing, not that that we all align with things, but just that the timing, so that they don't do it right after you've done it and then find that we've had some commonality or some things we should have considered. So I will bring that back to the group. I think they'll be very happy to hear about that, about the regulatory working group. The second one was adopting definition of a steep slope. I don't know if there was any progress made on that, and then applying it to the Frederick Miller Hill site.
President Ziegler, managers. So our steep slope is defined through our high-risk erosion areas. So we tend to look at a number of different factors. Is the slope greater than 18% or 18% or greater? What are the soil types there? What's the drainage patterns in the area? What's the vegetative cover like? We have not gone any further on that. I think that would be something that would come up in a rules revision in terms of what we want to do with that, and in our statement of need and reasonableness, where that nexus is to water resource protection in it. So we have not gone any further than the high risk erosion that's already in rule.
Do you need anything more for Frederick Miller or for that site in terms of a definition, or is that greater than 18% satisfactory for that project? Do you know?
It depends on what we are, what our objective is. Right now, the permit was reviewed under that rule, so that is what we would review it in relation to.
Okay.
But,
all right. Thank you.
Minnesota Lower Minnesota River Watershed District went through a large exercise, and they also adopted, I believe, 14% was the slope that they went with. But yes, it would have to be looked at through our rules revisions in terms of where we want to go to with it. Then we can also look at things like, for instance, the DNR definition. It has to have a minimum horizontal run and a minimum vertical rise, regardless of how steep the slope is.
I'll be honest with you. I don't know if that's I will bring this back and find out. I think Marilyn was probably the person that had this initially out there. I need to go back and look at that. But knowing that what you've done, I'll share that. And if there's something more specific, we can bring it back next time or keep it on our list. So Manager Ziegler, what would be the best way for us to find a way to present? Like, we present the motion, and then if we don't know what the status is, because you can't comment necessarily on the status right, like right on the spot, do we just put those open items on the agenda so that you guys are aware that we're still looking for answers? Do we just reference the Excel sheet? I'm just not sure of process and what we still need to do so that when the representative comes, they're not wasting your time.
So I know in the past we've had it set up so that the president of the board meets with the CAC representative monthly, and we kind of dropped that because I didn't know it existed when I became president. It seems like that's probably worthwhile. We'd have to find a time and maybe set up a regular meeting, maybe a week after the CAC meeting or something like that.
Okay.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I might suggest that if the managers have any ideas, that they submit them through Administrator Jeffrey, and if Administrator Jeffrey has some issues on that, that we collect those and have that part of that we could share with CAC, and they could come back and we can at least start a dialogue with something on paper as opposed to just having verbal communications, and hopefully we arrive at a method. I've nothing against having direct one-on-one conversations between one or more managers and obviously the CAC, but I think making sure the information on what's discussed and wasn't should be readily dispersed, so that all managers can be apprised as to what was discussed, and so that if we think it's appropriate to include on the agenda, that we can do that. So I would just say everybody should come up with their suggestions on a procedure, and we should look at them and go from there. Again, I apologize for interrupting. Sure.
That's okay. We're meeting on Monday. So if you have anything that you want included in the revision, you can go to the CAC Google Drive, and that's where the spreadsheet is. Honestly, I think it's pretty darn good. It seems like it has everything. And unless somebody's looking for really specific information, it seems like you could always go back to the meeting minutes if you needed it as well. So we might be really close. I mean, I don't think we have to make a huge thing of it, but I think we just want to be clear. And Larry, I like the idea, or Manager Cook, I like the idea of putting maybe a process in place so that when any of us are attending this meeting, we know everyone knows what to do, because there's different people all the time. So I like the idea of having a written process. I think that'll be helpful. And Manager Ziegler, President Ziegler, I will let President Alder know that you guys maybe would want to start at least some kind of intercommunication as we had, thought earlier on a few years back. So I think. Go
I
ahead,
was just
sorry.
suggesting that as something that was done in the past, but if there's a more efficient way to do it and including the other managers, that's fine with me.
All right. Well, thank you. I didn't have anything else. Did anyone have any questions for me?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon.
Thanks, Jill.
Okay. So let me see. The next item on the committee reports is confirming a board representative for the September 18th meeting of the CAC committee.
President Ziegler,
Yes.
I'm
Manager Kraft.
glad to attend that one.
Okay. Okay. The next item is to receive the governance committee report. Did we have minutes, or did we postpone the meeting?
President Ziegler.
Administrator Jeffrey.
Yeah, the minutes that we have are from the August 4th meeting. As if you remember, there wasn't enough time to turn, so that would have occurred right. There wasn't enough time to turn around those minutes for the meeting. So these are the August 4th committee meeting minutes that are included for acceptance.
Okay.
And at that meeting, we finished up the last of the governance manual edit review.
And due to schedule conflicts, we've had to postpone the next meeting, and we weren't quite ready to present the I believe legal counsel had some work to do yet before we presented it to the board as a whole.
President Ziegler,
Manager Crafton.
do we need a motion or anything to accept the minutes from the governance committee? I can't remember how we do that. From
We
the
have
August
done
4th. Go
we
ahead.
have done that in the past, and we don't have this one approved because it was too short of a time between the governance committee meeting and the board meeting. So this one is you're correct. This one needs to be we need a motion to accept or receive the committee report in the form of the minutes, and a second. And I'll make the motion to receive the governance committee report from.
Seconded.
And Terry, what's the date of the meeting that this is? So we have that in the record.
August 4th.
August 4th. Okay. Do we have any questions or comments on this item before we vote?
Yes, Mr. President.
Manager Cook?
So I had a couple of comments. First of all, on top of, I guess, there are no page numbers, but I believe it's the second page. With all due respect to Attorney Smith, I don't necessarily know or have knowledge of or agree that it is reference to well-established best practice, broad policy direction, and strategic direction, these vis-a-vis administrator and staff, is accurate. One thing I think that's been missing, I've reviewed the rules, and the statute, and the statute's pretty clear that we need to have rules. So we have some rules having to do with discretion, etc. But I'm not so sure we read our bylaws, etc., that it's as broad as Mr. Smith would feels that it is. My next comment is I'm apparently Mr. Duvall talked about. I wasn't sure what he was referring to. He said, or responding to minutia, and that is not material to a board meeting. So I'd be curious as to what he's referring to, and on that basis. So that's my second comment. That's in the first full paragraph on that page. And then Administrator Jeffrey reminded me in his comment about I guess you pronounce it PRAP grant. My understanding is that we were going to apply for a PRAP grant, and absent anything to the contrary, am I correct? That's fallen through the cracks. And if so, I think we should revise that, because I think that was one of the items that came out of a prior discussion with, I don't remember his name, the regional person for Bowser. So I think that definitely should be revisited. And I have another comment on the second full paragraph. I'm referring to the grayness of tax regulations. Again, I previously provided something that I don't think is pretty direct right from the IRS website regarding 1099s versus W-2s, and I think it's pretty explicit that, at least based on that, the IRS would treat managers as W-2 employees. W-2 employees meaning employees that whose salaries compensation is to be reported as wages with appropriate withholdings. And as far as whether or not you can get a ruling, you have to do some research because the IRS has a specific revenue procedure which states whether or not it will give rulings on certain items. So before we conclude that the IRS would not give us a ruling, I believe we should have that revenue procedure examined before we reach different conclusions. And then let's see here. And I wasn't sure what Manager Duvall was getting at in the last paragraph. It says he asked about objections that are raised during the meeting regarding the legality of how the watershed is operating. So I don't know what was referred to, and I would be interested as to what Manager Duvall was referring to, and if that accurately reflects his statement. So let me see, and I think I have a couple items left. I think it's important to bring it out, but I'll raise it in connection with the audit and finance meetings, but also let me commend the committee at least for putting the documentation on the website in compliance with the open meeting law, something that had not been done before. So I'm finished with my comments.
Okay. Do any other managers want to have questions or comments at this time? Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote? Mr. Smith, on receiving the governance committee report and minutes?
Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen absent, President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0 with one absence.
Okay, the next item is the receiving the audit and finance committee report.
President, I move that we receive the Audit and Finance Committee report.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments on the audit and finance committee report provided in the board packet?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I have several comments. One is that I would like to know the basis for the purported statement by Manager Duvall that somehow the Audit and Finance Committee motion and Treasurer's approval was all that was necessary to apparently decide on investing $1 million in the Forum short-term fixed term. I looked at our bylaws, and there's nothing that I saw that gave the Audit and Finance Committee that authority, and nothing that gave the Treasurer that authority. And as part of this, I will note that I brought this up for multiple years now, that the district has not adopted policies, in my view, at least none has been provided to me, despite the fact that I've requested them, setting forth our investment policies, much less authorizing any one person or committee to approve any type of investment. So my view is that absent a policy procedure duly adopted by the board, which I believe would be a rule, which I believe pursuant to statute, we would have to give certain notice. the audit and finance, neither the audit and finance nor the treasurer has the authority to make those investments. And as I said, I suggest that those policies be developed sooner rather than later. And I've made this also, and I intend to, notify the state auditor as well as Bowser. I do not see how it is possible for an auditor to give an audit opinion when they have not seen or had any approved procedures for doing financial statements, etc. And what they recite, and I've asked this question before, what they recite as alleged policies have never been adopted. So this is a grave concern and should be rectified immediately. And I would hope that the Audit and Finance Committee would bring this up. And then the second item is it appears that the committee went into closed session, and I have concerns that discussions of financing fall within the exception to the open meeting law, since it does not, I think, to the offer itself. And I've reviewed it. I think the exception is very narrow, and I would caution that I would think if you want to go into closed session, you should have legal counsel present so that they can comment on whether or not the discussion is appropriate for closed session. I mean, I'm not sure financing something or its impact is the same as determining an offer price or purchase price. So those are my comments.
Okay, do
President
any
Ziegler?
Manager Crafton?
Yeah, well, we didn't go into that kind of detail, Manager Cook. The Board of Managers had already voted to use the 4M fund. We could be earning a whole lot more interest with the money that we've got sitting in the bank. So our discussion basically was on making sure that the amount of money that we wanted to invest for short term, up to I think it was up to 9 months, wouldn't be needed elsewhere for budgetary concerns. So we were within what had already been approved. We were just trying to do due diligence to make sure that that wasn't money that might be needed. So that was all that was about.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
just a short reply to that. Nothing that was said by Manager Crafton allays my concerns about having closed session, and the fact that the board has decided to utilize 4M, does not allay the need to have adopted an investment policy, and certainly does not allay the fact that unless I'm not aware of giving that the audit and finance or the treasurer have any authority to make any investments, at least with respect to the 4M funds. And as I said, I would hope that the Audit and Finance Committee would rectify that issue and make a recommendation to the managers as to how investments should be completed, approved, suggested, etc. I finished.
Mr. President,
Manager Duval?
so I'll just make a comment on the short-term investment. And I can't find it in my stack of notes here, but but the previous board approved a resolution that basically authorizes the administrator, with consultation with the treasurer, to make short-term investments. And that was I don't remember the exact date. I'm not sure if Manager Crafton remembers that or not, but I can find it here somewhere, but I did have it up in my notes at one point. So the other thing is we had a lengthy meeting at a couple meetings back with the 4M managers, and it really relates to short-term cash management. This is an investment in the general sense of choosing to make different investments. It's a matter of basically the same investments and whether or not they're locked into anything up to a year's worth of time. But it's virtually the same thing. So whatever resolution that authorized the original investment in the 4M fund, I think, again, I don't know what board authorized that, but basically it's just moving money around within the 4M fund. And it's essentially the same investment. And we spent quite a bit of time actually reviewing that earlier in the year when we had discussions about some West Coast bank failures. One of the questions I had, and I think Manager Koch mentioned it also, as to whether or not we had investments that were at risk. And was it Mr. Boyer? I think that's his name.
Mhm.
He said specifically that they did not have any investments in those, and they have a group within the 4M fund that specifically looks at those kinds of investments. And the 4M fund did not have any money invested in it. The 4M fund is primarily made up of the highest grade investment vehicles that are out there, including a significant portfolio of CD funds at various banks around the country. So from what we could tell, based on the memo or the resolution, authorized the administrator to move money around as needed based on our cash flow requirements. This is not making investments in the sense of choosing it to park it somewhere outside of the 4M fund. So that's, I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you. So,
Mr. President,
Manager Cook,
if I could just request receiving a copy of the documentation referred to, which if it's substantially actions taking, I'm certainly happy with that.
President Ziegler, managers, yes, I can send resolutions 21012 and 22016 to Manager Cook, which were voted on and passed by the full board.
thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on receiving the audit finance report? Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager DeVal,
Yes.
Manager Cook.
Yeah.
Manager Pedersen, absent. President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0 with one absence.
Okay, the next item on the committee reports agenda is receive the personnel committee report. Do we have any motions on this item?
I'll move acceptance or reception of the Personnel Committee special meeting minutes.
President, I'll second it.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions on the personnel committee report? Hearing none, Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote, please, on accepting the personnel committee report?
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager DeVal,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen, absent. President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0 with one absence.
Okay, thank you. The next item is the consent agenda. And I believe that there's two items remaining on the consent agenda: to adopt the resolution to approve the consent agenda and to approve permit 2023-049, 351 Jonah Drive, residence. So it's a permit that didn't have any requests for any variances. That was fairly straightforward.
President,
So
I move that we accept the consent agenda with the items removed, but the remaining item is to approve permit 2023-049-351 at Joanna Drive, Pearson residence.
I'll second.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments on the consent agenda item?
Yeah, sure. Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I move we amend the resolution to provide that adoption of the consent agenda is adoption of the proposed resolutions set forth in the report provided by our engineering with respect to this permit.
I guess I don't have the resolution in front of me, but I thought that was already included in the resolution 23-054. Administrator Jeffrey, can you tell us if that text is included in that resolution?
President Ziegler, managers know the resolution just references thereto, including the following items, and then those items would be listed that were in there.
Okay, so I'll second Manager Cook's motion to include the recommendations made by the engineer's report. Any questions or comments before we vote on the motion to change all of the items recommended by the engineer in the reviewing of this permit?
President Ziegler?
Manager Crafton?
Yeah, since I was having a little technical problem and I didn't hear the agenda adjustments. So what specifically, we're not going to vote on, or we're not accepting the staff engineers or regulatory reports, right?
Right, those have all been moved to the action items.
And permit that ends in -017 and -038 and -047, are those all moved to?
Yes.
Okay, just making clear. Okay.
Okay. Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote on modifying resolution 23-054?
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager
Yes.
Manager Pedersen absent, President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Okay, so that brings us to the resolution 23-054. We had a motion and a second to approve this. Do we have any other questions or comments before we vote? Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote on approving resolution 23-054?
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen, absent. President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
So these would be old business. So if we go back to the next item on the agenda, then would be the August staff report. Do we have any motions on this item?
President, I move we adopt the August staff report.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments on receiving the August staff report?
Yes, Mr. President, I have a few. Um, so basically, we go to, looking at my comments. My first one is at the bottom of page 1. I know there's going to be some discussion about 2024 benefits, and I would just ask that the information that's received from North Risk Partners could be shared with at least myself in addition to the personnel committee. So that's comment on that. Page 2, quickly. I noticed, and this is going to be discussed later, about the alternate treasurer's report. We can discuss that later. The big thing, though, is apparently the water management plans. There's a list on page 2. They're up for review or change, or that, and I want to reiterate. I think it's crucial that we get moving on reviewing our rules and updating them before these various water management plans are to be adopted or reviewed. I want to make sure that we have the best opportunity to make sure that these plans incorporate any changes that we want to make to our rules. I think that's important. I think we have some latitude I'd like to discuss, but I just feel that this topic of amending our rules as they pertain to permits has been delayed. Unfortunately, I think went too long. So I go to page 4. I believe I've mentioned that before and
Manager
asked. Sorry.
No, Manager Cook. Administrator Jeffrey is raising his hand. He may
sorry.
want to comment on this as we go.
I'd like to speak that item. I just want to remind the managers, thank you, President Ziegler, that no municipality has adopted consistently protective rules to ours. So in all cases, all of our municipalities defer enforcement of our rules to us. So even if they update their plan will still state that they are deferring rule enforcement to us.
Mr. President.
Manager Cook.
That being said, I think it's important that we still work on reviewing and making any changes we deem appropriate to our rules. And as Ms. McCarter said, I think having a discussion and possible changes with regard to steep slopes is just one of the items that we should consider. And I don't have to go into detail now, but I think that's worthy of a workshop sooner rather than later to have a discussion, maybe a refresher on what the rules are, and then a discussion about possible changes. I don't want to dally too long. What I was going to talk about on page 4 is if there's a watershed stewardship grant, report spreadsheet I at least would like to see it. I think other people might want to be able to see it. It would be something that we could see, what's been done, what's out there, etc. So that was one reason I wanted to bring this up at this time. Let's see. On page 5, I mentioned this already. I've already said I think the website needs some significant work. So I would hope that if we're adding 2 additional bodies, we'll find a way to update the website, make it consistent. I previously provided a list of I don't know if you want to call them issues, but items or things that I believe should be changed or revised. I've already mentioned the fact of it didn't seem like there was any particular order to the recordings that are put up on the YouTube channel. And then I've already mentioned this again, but I want to bring it up again about the groundwater conservation. Whether this is going to be part of the EHAP, et cetera, but I think we need to either come up with a policy, et cetera, or scratch this from having, money set aside for that line item. And just finally paging through here. On page 11, has one having to do with our property down there at what is it, 101 and what's that other street? Or the property we acquired, for I guess flood protection, et cetera, and the issue about the fence. I'm wondering if we can't have legal counsel weigh in on that. There's all kinds of the law on adverse possession, et cetera. And before we go and agree to be removing fences, I think we should make sure that we're required to do it. Even if we're not required, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't cooperate or help. But I think before we go and just assume that we have to remove the fence, I think we should have legal counsel weigh in on it. Maybe we own property that we don't know due to adverse possession. I think these are abstract, not Torrance property, but I just think that it'd be worth having all the facts before a decision is made as to removing fences or paying for fences, et cetera. Let's see. On I've looked at the rest of these. I think I'll be finishing my comments. So thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments with regard to the staff report, the August staff report? Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote on receiving the August staff report?
Manager Crafton, Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen absent, President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Okay, the next item is receive the August engineers report. Do we have any motions on this item?
Mr. President, I move that we receive the August engineers report.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments on the August engineer report?
Yes, Mr. President.
Manager Cook?
The main one that I'd like to discuss or have questions about is on page 2, item E. And I reading this again, I'm concerned about how much time and expense may be invested in this project that seems to me to keep coming back. And so I'd like some information on that. I mean, it seems to me if we're not collecting a fee on this, we should be come to a point where we say we're done. If you want to submit a plan, submit your deposit, and we go from there. So I don't know if anybody has any comments on the status or how this negotiations or discussions are going.
President Ziegler,
Yes, Engineer Sobiak.
Manager Cook. The applicant has submitted the required permit fee of $3,000, as well as the additional $2,000 fee for the variance request. We met with them on site at the middle of August to talk about plan revisions to reduce or potentially eliminate the need for the floodplain variance request. They have since, at the end of August, August 31st, submitted revised plans that so far in the review process has shown that they have eliminated the need for the floodplain variance, and they will still be requesting a variance for the wetland buffers. Hoping to have that in front of the board at the October meeting.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate that update. Thank you. Mr. President, just
Manager
double
Cook.
check. I don't have anything other than I really appreciate the I guess the worksheet, whatever you want to call it, at the end of giving summarizing where the various projects are. That's, to me, is very helpful. So thank you again for doing that. And I'm finished. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments on the August engineers report?
Mr. President,
Manager Duval.
so I would just chime in with Manager Koch that sheet at the end is really helpful. It gives a good synopsis of good synopsis of where the projects are, and it's really helpful.
Good, I thought it was helpful also. Any other questions or comments on the August engineer report before we vote? Hearing none, Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote on receiving the August engineers report?
Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager Duval,
Yes,
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen absent, President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Okay, the next item is to receive the August regulatory report. Do we have any motions on this item?
President Ziegler,
Manager Crafton.
I'll move acceptance of the regulatory program report.
I'll second, Mr. President.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to receive the August regulatory report. Do we have any questions or comments on the August regulatory report?
President Ziegler,
Manager Crafton.
I had one comment. One thing that would be really helpful is if we had some kind of an acronym table, because sometimes there are things on there that I can't remember what they are. So if we just had one that could be either at the top or added, but some kind of place for references.
Okay.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook.
I have two quick items. One I noticed on one of the administratively approved permits, the last one having to do St. Andrew's Lutheran, that they converted one row of parking to a green space. I just had a quick question. Was that anything like what St. Hubert's did, or was it, just curb and green space?
Yeah, President Ziegler, Manager Cook. Yeah, it was just the elimination of additional parking that they didn't need and converting it into lawn.
That's unfortunate. I wish we could have got them to stick in a few trees, et cetera, on that basis. I don't know if that's something we want to broadcast to some of these places. If they want to do that, I would be all in favor of helping with the grant to fund putting some trees and drainage in there. But my last question was, let's see, I think it's the last page. It's the third item. There's a date of of September 5th, 2021. And I'm wondering, is that the right date for the
President
submission?
Ziegler, Manager Cook, it is the right date. The contractor has been in and spoken with me twice, and staff Nikolai at least twice. And for whatever reason, every plan he submits excludes the full information necessary. So, yeah, as we discussed in the last meeting, we'll bring him before you in October, and what his plan is what his plan is, and the managers will have to decide how they want to proceed with this case.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I was reading it correctly. Thank you. That's all the comments I have. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions on receiving the August regulatory report?
Nope. President Ziegler,
Manager Crafton?
just wanted to thank Matt, doing a really good job. This is really helpful. So thank you.
Thank you, Manager.
Okay. Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, can we have a roll call vote, please, on accepting the August regulatory report?
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen absent, President Ziegler.
Yes.
The motion carries 4-0.
Okay, the next item is to approve permit 2013-017 Crew Car Wash, Eden Prairie. Do we have any motions on this item?
President, I move that we approve permit number 2013-017 Crew Car Wash, Eden Prairie.
President Ziegler,
Manager Crafton?
I'll second, but I think it's 2023
2023, yes.
-017.
Mr. President,
2013-017.
Oh, it's
President-
listed wrong on the notes on the agenda.
Okay,
See, Terry's nodding his head.
To be 2-3.
Well, there's already one that's 2-3. It's a different car wash. It's as it happens.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I move to amend the motion by to adopt the proposed resolution set forth in the district permit application review for 2023-017, so that we incorporate, all the terms and conditions as set forth in those motions.
Okay, I'll second that motion to amend the motion. Do we have any questions or comments on that? Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote on the motion to revise the approval to include all of the recommendations on the engineer's review of this permit?
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen absent, President Ziegler.
Yes.
The motion carries 4-0.
Okay, and just a clarification, is it 2013? I know that lot has been sitting, it was the old lot on the corner of 4 and 5 there with Burger King sign and no building.
Right. President Ziegler,
It's been out there a while.
It has been. It's 2023-017. Burger King originally came in with a permit, but they withdrew it. And so this is a new
Okay.
owner.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the resolution for permit 2023-017, including all the recommendations from the engineer's summary provided in the board packet. Do we have any other questions or comments on this,
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I had basically three questions. They also pertain to the other car wash and whether or not there's what's being done there. Is there stormwater discharge permits? Are there filtrations being required on these, or reuse requirements on these car washes so as to minimize the amount of water being used and to avoid having a bunch of chemicals, end up in the waterways. So I didn't know if anybody can address that. And then also I noticed on that site to the southwest of that is, to the northeast of that is, I believe, a wetland, or it would flow into a wetland that's crossed 5 to the northeast. So I don't know if somebody's in a position to address those three items.
President Ziegler,
Yes, Engineer Sobiak.
Manager Cook, with respect to the water use by both car washes that our board is considering tonight, they do store and recycle as much water that's used for car washing on site. So they reuse it as much as possible. Once it gets to some point, predetermined level that they determine, any water discharge that's been used for car wash is discharged to the sanitary sewer line. It's not discharged to storm sewer line. Manager Cook, your second question about the wetland to the northeast of the proposed crew car wash site, that is a high value wetland. The applicant did go through and demonstrate compliance with the regulatory program to provide wetland protection, meaning that they're not increasing the bounce or inundation, and that they are providing adequate water quality treatment before discharging water from their site to the wetland.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
first of all, thank you, Mr. Sobiak, for that. I'm always a little bit concerned that you use car washes that, this stuff doesn't always get, I'm concerned that it doesn't always get captured, by the reuse, and that, knowing the slope on that site, having frequented that Burger King, yeah, I'm concerned that, stuff that drains off the cars ends up rolling down and going into the wetland. So that was the reason I asked that question. And even if we can't make that work here, is that something I think that's something we should consider, going forward. Are they really capturing the runoff from the vehicles? So that ends my comments. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments on permit 2023-017?
President Ziegler,
Manager Crafton?
so I had another question for Engineer Sobiak. So the other one is using jellyfish filter and a contact storm filter. What's this one that we're just voting on using? Do you know, or what? It might have been in there. I just can't remember.
President Ziegler, Manager Crafton, at the crew car wash site, the soils are conducive to infiltration. So from a stormwater management perspective, they're proposing an underground chamber to infiltrate stormwater.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote on the revised resolution to approve permit number 2023-017.
Manager Kraft?
Yes.
No. I didn't hear Manager DeBell,
Yes, I didn't hear you, sorry.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen absent, President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Okay, the next item is to approve permit 2023-038, Mr. Car Wash. And I believe Manager Cook already mentioned that it should be revised to adopt the resolution that includes all of the recommendations on the engineer's report on this topic. And Manager Cook, did you have any other specific questions for this one?
No, I had no other specific questions that have been addressed either in response to my questions or Manager Crafton's. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions? Well, first, do we have a motion on this item?
President, I
Mr.
move.
President,
Oh, go ahead.
Mr. President, I move that we adopt the resolutions proposed in the district permit application review for permit number 2023-038.
Okay, I'll second that motion. Do we have any questions or comments on this that haven't already been answered?
President Ziegler.
Manager Crafton.
So this is a question for Engineer Sobiek, and it's not really related to this exactly, but the abstraction of 0.55, is that something we should be doing a resolution about and asking, I guess, PCA about revising that standard at some point or not?
President Ziegler, Manager Crafton, the requirement for the 1.1 inch or for a restricted site like this site we're talking about here of 0.55, that's a watershed district requirement. The MPCA just established guidelines in their MIDS program that 0.55 it could be considered for a restricted site. The former manager's former board did go ahead and adopt that into the regulatory program. But as the managers, you can change that if you so decide to do so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments on the permit 2023-038, Mr. Car Wash? Okay, hearing no other questions, can we have a roll call vote to adopt the resolution, including the engineer's recommendations for permit 2023-038, Mr. Car Wash?
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes,
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen absent, President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Okay, so the last item on this that was moved from the consent agenda is to approve permit 2023-047 HCRRA Mink 20 and 6, I'm sorry, 60 and 61 culvert rehabilitation as presented in board action section of the permit review report.
President,
Mr. President,
go ahead, Mr. Coe, Manager Coe.
Mr. President, I move that we adopt the proposed resolution set forth in the district permit application review for permit number 2023-047.
President, I second.
Okay. So yes, okay. So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments about the permit 2023-047?
Mr. President?
Manager Cook?
Yes, the reason I pulled this from the consent agenda had to do with what appeared to me to be a little inconsistency. If we go to page 5, at the top, G1 says one of the requirements apparently is to update the plans to include a note, et cetera, et cetera. And then, but the findings, item number 1 at the bottom of that page says the proposed project includes the information necessary. It just struck me as somewhat inconsistent to do it that way. But so my point is that perhaps these permit requests need to be reviewed just to make sure that they're consistent. Maybe I'm missing something under the findings and the and recommendations that reflect G1, but it didn't jump out at me. Although I know item 2 says proposed project will conform to rule G, but it seems to me that perhaps there was a necessary to provide. Is it item 2 under recommendations? Is that what refers to G1? Maybe I just missed it.
Yeah.
Maybe Mr. Sobiak could address that.
President Ziegler, Manager Cook, that's correct. It's item number 2 listed under recommendations. That ties back to item G1.
Okay, very good. Thanks for answering that question. I have no further questions.
Okay, are there any other questions on this permit? Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote on approving the resolution, including the engineer's recommendations for permit 2023-047?
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen absent, President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Okay, I believe that brings us to new business. Okay, I see a nod there. The first item then is to accept the July's treasurer's report. Do we have any motions on this item?
I'd like to move acceptance of the treasurer's report, which has been reviewed with our internal controls and procedures.
President, I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments on the July treasurer's report?
Yes, Mr. President.
Manager Cook?
So I have one question that would be on, I guess it's the second page, the visa activity report, and I noticed that there was an item halfway down. I may know what this is, but under Minnesota State, it said Administrator Graduate Certificate. I'm wondering if perhaps I could have an explanation for this.
President Ziegler, managers, yes, this was the program that came out of my January review and subsequent personnel committee recommendation for my training.
But is this recognition that you received a graduate certificate?
I apologize. No, I wish I would. I am in the process of receiving a graduate certificate.
I thought maybe that's what it was. So, but move on to again on the having to do with the balance sheet. I am still concerned that we would be showing a negative balance in any account. It just generally raises, red flags, or at least it should, I believe, with auditors, especially since I believe there's officer of the control of the currency policies about allowing negative balances. But if there's an exception to that, I would like to know, what it is.
Mr. President, if I might address Mr. or Manager Koch's comments.
Managed well.
So I just wanted to make one other clarification because our meeting has been moved back a month. This statement is not really the July statement, it's the August statement. So it actually reflects 2 months worth of transactions. And then with regard to the US Bank and the 4M fund, we're in the process of getting that consolidated. I don't really understand why we haven't been able to do it yet, but I think on our next month's report, it will be consolidated. We went through a pretty good discussion on that, again, with the 4M advisory group. The US Bank is really just a transaction element component of the 4M fund, that we don't really have a standalone US Bank account. It's connected to the 4M fund. So those two numbers should be merged. It's the 7.6 million minus the 133,000. So it should show up just as the 4M fund account. And I'm not sure exactly how it got started that way, but next statement, it should be just one number and it'll show our 4M account balance. If that answers your question, Manager Koch.
Well, thank you for that, and I'll look forward to the next statement. If I can continue, Mr. President.
Manager Cook.
So I think, well, unless I missed something and I was asleep, it appears that we have a different format for our treasurer's report. And first I'll say is that I guess overall I like the change in the format. We get more information, better information. Hopefully end up asking fewer questions. Although I have to ask, I would have thought that any definitive change would have at least come to the board with a question of how do you like this versus this, and should we adopt it? So that's one comment. The second is that is it possible to provide a what do you call it, statement of accounts, so it can understand where each one of these items is being allocated to, and if that isn't worthwhile, again, I've asked for, and I'd like this to be a standing request to be able to get the accountant's detailed statement, financial statements, so I can understand. I can look at this and say, okay, that went into this account for this reason, etc. But I will say, I think, despite not being approved, I think it's a significant increase. The one thing that I did note on the page 2 of 2, I didn't spend a lot of time on it, but I couldn't quite get the numbers to tie out. It looks like there were different numbers than what are in the balance sheet. So perhaps the accountants and maybe the audit finance, if necessary, and the treasurer could look into that. I just like an explanation as to why they appear to be different. And then my other comments, if you go to page 2 of 10, I believe that each one of those items had amount under general office had numbers tied to them. In fact, I think all of them had numbers tied to them. if I'm understanding the last column, percentage expended, especially when you go to the like general office, I don't have a feel for whether we're over or under the amounts that we had anticipated expending on those particular items. And I think it's important to have that. And my understanding is the percent expended is of the total amount. And I would want to see what is the percentage expended of the amount, originally budgeted for that item. So I can tell whether we're in or out of our budget amount before we end up getting to the end of the year. So I think that would be an important change to that, and I think that could apply to at least all those that where we had a breakdown under our budget. I think we should have all those numbers, and then if we go to the top of page 3, I would like to see us as break out the audit and accounting expense. And in auditing, I would think that we could have a separate line item or combine what the auditors charge and what the accountants specifically charge for any work on the audit, so that we know what we are in fact paying for monthly accounting services. And on that point, I would like to see us look at, do we really need to spend the money we're spending with our accountants? Seems to me they're doing work that, staff could do as far as entering numbers, et cetera. So it seemed to me that should be looked at. Try to see here. Go down. I just want to hit the high notes. Also in education and outreach on the top of page 5, same thing. I think there were amounts allocated to each one of those line items. We should be continuing to do that in our comparison, and we should at least have columns that shows us, where we're at vis-a-vis the budget item for that amount. And then, sorry. Then I had a question. If you go to page 8 of 10, under St. Hubert's Water Quality Project, I thought we were done with that project. Are these carryover numbers or carryover amounts?
President Ziegler, Manager Cook, we have 2 years of maintenance remaining on it, so that's what the outstanding balance is for.
Let's see. Okay, but that's on if I look at it, it's year-to-date expenditure. So we spent $20,000 for maintenance, and that's under construction. So I just ask if you look at it and get back to us, at the next meeting.
President Ziegler, Manager Cook, I can speak to it now. That 19,000, if you remember, we had retainage that was supposed to be released. So that's the $19,000 retainage released to Minger Construction. So that's what that 19,000 is.
So that would, okay, good. Thank you for that explanation. Then it was a little confusing to me. If you go to page 9, we have Purgatory Creek, for example, and then the same thing on Scenic Heights. We don't have any amounts. We showed negative numbers, and that just gets, to me, gets a little bit confusing. It would seem to me that if the column heading is balance of budget remaining, I'm wondering if it should stop at 0. But, right, again, it gets a little confusing. And my final comment is it possible to have the column headings printed on each page? It would make it a little easier when you're, paging through them. If the column headings would be repeated on each page. And that's it for my comments. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments or responses on this particular? Hearing none, Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote on accepting the July and August treasurer's report? Is that accurate?
Yes.
Man-
Yes, it is.
Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager DeVal,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
This is a motion simply to receive the report. Am I
Correct.
right.
Treasurer's
Yes.
report.
If that's the case, I will vote yes.
Manager Pedersen absent, President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
So, Mr. President,
Yes. Manager Duval.
so to Manager Cook's question there, is this to accept or is it to receive? What is the process there?
I think it's receive. It says accept, but I think it's to receive it. I mean, we're not voting on its anything other than we saw it and looked at it and were had
Could
time
be.
to ask questions.
Should be receiving. Should be receiving in the same manner as we receive the other reports.
Okay. I think we're on the same page. Okay, the next item. So we voted on this, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the next item is to adopt the resolution 23-055 approving payment of the bills. Do we have any motions on this item?
I'll move payment of the bills, this resolution.
President, I'll second.
20.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments on resolution 23-055 approving payments of the bills? Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote, Mr. Smith?
Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager DeVal,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen absent, President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Okay, the next item is to consider the permit 2023-044 Chanhassen Trail Walk Improvements variance request from Rule D minimum buffer width requirements. Do we have any motion on this item?
President, I move that we. Is this considering the permit? Does that mean we're approving it or?
Mr. President,
this is a variance, right?
Mr. Smith?
the first item of business is to review and approve the variance, or the board may choose not to approve, but the action would be to approve the variance based on the detailed findings and recommended action in the engineer's report.
President Ziegler?
Yes, Administrator Jeffrey.
Just to speak to what maybe Manager DeVal's confusion of why variance says considered and the permit says approved, it's because the variance falls squarely within the domain of the board as to whether or not they feel that a variance is appropriate. Whereas the engineer will recommend approval of a permit in saying that it does comport with our rules, with the exception of that variance, which the managers need to consider.
So from just handling the matter, we can vote to approve, or we can talk about it and then ask for motions. So we could do it either way. Is that correct, Mr. Smith?
Well, Mr. President, I would say that your typical action, as Robert's rules, is to get a motion before the body and then debate and discuss it. So I
Okay.
think your practice of requesting motion is in order.
Okay.
Mr. President, I move that we accept the permit and the variance action for permit number 2023-044 to include the engineer's application review comments.
Okay, I think the way it's set up, we're going to vote separately on the variance and then vote on the permit after. And that's what we've traditionally done, not try and do them both at the same time. So I'll second the motion to approve the variance on permit 2023-044 Chanhassen Trail Walk improvements.
President Ziegler,
Manager Crafton.
and could engineer Sobiek kind of walk us through the variance real quickly?
Yeah.
Mr.
Yeah,
President,
I think he can.
Mr. President, is
Manager
there a
Cook?
second to your motion?
I was trying to second Manager Duvall's motion, but just clarify.
Well, Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
can I move that we amend the motion to adopt the position of the applicant with respect to the criteria set forth in our rules for approving a variance.
So I believe I understand, and I believe Mr. Sobiak had gone through that. So that sounds like a friendly amendment to me.
Is so intended so that we have a record that we have at least what we the resolution that says just approve it, but I believe we want a factual determination for the resolution to justify our approving the variance. And I think that's generally a recommended course of action, so that people know that we've looked at it and we have reasons to adopt it. And so that's why I'm proposing call it friendly amendment, if you would, that we're basically adopting the position of the applicant with respect to the various criteria for granting a variance under our rules.
So Manager Duvall, do you accept that?
Yes.
Okay. Engineer Sobiak, can you walk us through this variance request?
President Ziegler, I can do that, and I'm going to share my screen here quickly. Are folks able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Managers, what you have before you is a permit report and a variance request from the city of Chanhassen for their trail improvement project that they want to undertake this year. The permit report itself actually has 3 different locations in it. The variance request that they're requesting is only tied to location number 3, the Galpin Boulevard area, which is south of Highway 5 on the west side of Galpin Boulevard. For site number 3 at this location, they're reconstructing and realigning roughly 120 feet of trail. Triggers the floodplain management rule, the erosion prevention, and sediment control rule and the wetland buffers rule. It does not trigger or triggers stormwater management, but it's exempt from stormwater management criteria because it is a trail buffered down gradient by a pervious area that's at least half the width of the trail. Overall compliance summary for this permit report is it will comply with Rule B, floodplain management. They are providing the compensatory storage. With respect to Rule C, the only item that is outstanding is they need to provide the name of the contractor responsible for erosion control during construction. For Rule D, they need to provide a maintenance agreement, and they are requesting a variance from the minimum buffer width and the allowing of a trail within a impervious trail within that buffer. Permit fees do not apply and financial assurance do not apply because it's a government entity. Just to remind the manager, the variance criteria that are set forth in Rule K, as you consider the variance request, we want to look at how substantial the variance is from the rule provision, the effects of the variance on government service, whether the variance will substantially change the character or cause materially adverse effect to water resources, flood levels, drainage, or general welfare in the district, whether the practical difficulty can be alleviated by a technical and economically feasible method other than the variance, how the practical difficulty occurred, and then in light of the above factors, whether the variance serves in interest of justice. So again, they're requesting variance from the minimum buffer width because they have a trail within the minimum buffer. As a result, it would require a variance from two different subsections of the rule. The graphic that I have up here on the screen before you, the purple-ish line represents the existing trail alignment. The orange line represents their realignment. So you can see what they're looking at doing is shifting the trail a little bit to the southwest in order to make it a longer length over the same elevation change to help flatten the slope slightly. In doing so, they are flattening the slope and helping for pedestrian safety is their primary reason. They are providing buffer to the maximum extent that they can in terms of they're providing it right up to the edge of the existing trail that is along the west side of Galpin. So they're maximizing the buffer that they can. The area where it is not achieving the minimum for this wetland, it's only 10 feet instead of the required 30 feet minimum for this high value wetland. You can see here that the existing trail itself is also within 10 feet of the existing wetland delineation. So if we look at each one of the individual rule area, we'll call them, how substantial is the variance from the provision? The 10 feet represents only 33% of the required, so it is a substantial reduction. To help the managers understand, I've also listed here for high value wetland, the required minimum is 30. The required average is 60. They're providing a minimum of 10, and they're providing an average of 55.5, which is right up as far as they can go up to the edge of the existing trail there. The next couple of criteria relate to the variance effects on government services and whether the variance will substantially change the character or cause adverse impact to the resource. The information submitted demonstrates that the proposed buffer minimum width of 10 feet will not alter the character of the existing wetland because the existing trail is also 10 feet away from the wetland. As part of their design of their trail, they're actually tilting it to help redirect some of that impervious surface to a stormwater feature as opposed to directing it all into the proposed buffer. Whether the practical difficulty can be alleviated with technical measures, they do need a trail connection here to allow the pedestrian traffic. So what they looked at is keeping it in the existing location as an alternative and just reconstructing it right along its current alignment, which would keep the slope at about 18% as opposed to their proposed alignment, which reduces the slope to 12%. To help offset some of their shortfall that they have, they are proposing to take an area of that wouldn't be required to be buffered and provide buffer further to the north and actually go in and do some vegetation management to clean out some of the buckthorn as well. So that's they're helping provide improved habitat by doing that, call it buckthorn management in that area. And then the fifth criteria, how the practical difficulty occur, the applicant is creating the need for the variance by reconstructing the trail. But they're doing so in an effort to improve pedestrian and city maintenance aspects of the trail itself. So we're finding that there is adequate technical information for the managers to rely on to grant the request for a variance from the minimum buffer width and for allowing the reconstruction of the impervious trail within the minimum buffer width. Are there questions?
So I have one question that kind of came up. You know, the rules all talk about impervious trails, but is there a pervious trail option in this case? I know I look at the pervious pavers that they used at that Total Wine in Chanhassen. They look horrible. You know, what is it, 3 years old, 4 years old is all, and I don't know. So those, I wouldn't recommend those by any means, but I've read some other stuff about pervious asphalt and stuff. But is there one that's good, that doesn't fall apart?
With respect to pervious pavements, they do require ongoing maintenance.
Okay.
And putting a pervious pavement on a slope like this does represent challenges. Essentially, you end up with the water filtering through and eroding the subbase material. And that is part of the challenge with this site is the slope that it's on. Even if you were to use some type of a aggregate gravel, you still could have that potential for concentrating flows and leading to erosion. So for that perspective, the impervious trail also it connects up with impervious on one end and it's impervious on the other end.
Okay.
Mr.
Thank
President?
you. Manager Cook?
Well, question for Mr. Sobiek, first of all. It doesn't look like the additional impervious area is that significant, but it's hard to judge, and I guess I don't know where to find that information. Do you know? I mean, it doesn't look like that much looking at the diagram. And certainly it seems to me the safety factor is not insignificant.
Manager Cook, I don't have the number in terms of square footage of additional imperviousness, but you are correct. It is relatively minor in this instance.
Okay, thank you. That's my only comments. Thank you.
It does seem like if you have freezing water on the trail that has a steep slope, that doesn't sound very safe.
President Ziegler.
Manager Crafton?
So I'm assuming another piece of this is access, people that might be in wheelchairs or something. So you pretty much need a pavement or something that's going to be stable for them to use.
Okay.
Which kind of speaks to the justice piece. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I'm convinced that the variance is in the interest of justice for the workers that are cleaning off the trail and people who are using the trail, especially in the winter. Do we have any other questions or comments? We have a motion to approve the variance and a second with the conditions recommended by the engineer for approving the variance, and then the documentation for the reasons be included in the motion. Do we have any other questions or comments on this, or can we vote?
Mr. President,
Manager Duval?
so I have a question for Mr. Kubiak. So reducing the slope of the trail, does that improve or lessen the impact of runoff and the fact that it's impervious?
President Ziegler, Manager Duval, flattening the slope from an 18% down to a 12% does help reduce the rate at which water is flowing across the ground. So for that perspective, it would help reduce the erosion potential to some extent. 12% is still, I can't call it steep, but it's not flat either.
That's not measured in the calculations at all, is that correct? It's not measured, that difference between the steepness.
If you were doing stormwater calculations, you would account for that change in slope, yes, from an 18 to a 12%, and you would notice a difference in the velocities flowing down the slope.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments before we vote on the motion in front of us? Hearing none, we're going to vote on the
Variance.
considering the variance for 2023-044 Chanhassen Trail Walk improvements. So we're voting on approving the variance. Mr. Smith?
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen absent, President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Okay, so that brings us to the approving the permit.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
So I'd like to move approval of permit 2023-044 Chanhassen Trail Walk Improvement as presented in the proposed board action section and what we just did of the permit review report.
President, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments? Okay, can we have a roll call vote on approving permit 2023-044 with engineers' recommendations for this permit?
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen absent, President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is to adopt resolution 23-056, setting,
President Ziegler?
yes,
So I would like to move resolution 2023-056 to adopt the 2024 budget and levy.
President, I'll second.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments before we vote? Okay, can we vote on, Mr. Smith, can we vote on adopting resolution 23, right? This is, right, 23056, setting the draft budget and levy for 2024 fiscal year. Mr. Smith, you're on mute.
Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager Duval,
Yes,
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen absent, President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Okay, just see where we are. Okay, it looks to me like the next item is G, adopt resolution 23-057, modifying the organizational chart to reflect the new allocation of staff responsibilities. Do we have
President
any
Ziegler?
motions? Yes, Manager Kraft.
yes, I'd like to move resolution number 23-057 to amend the organizational chart to reflect the new allocation of staff responsibilities.
President, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments on this particular item?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
so would it be possible somebody on this chart, are all of these positions, except for the two we're talking about, currently filled? And if so, by whom?
President Ziegler, Manager Cook. Yes. Let me go ahead and share my screen and I can walk through that with you. It's coming up. It should be visible now. I'll make it larger so that you can see what's going on. Okay. Starting out the top of the organizational chart, district administrator, this is myself. District engineer is Bar Engineering and Scott Sobiak's filling that position. And then, of course, we have our other professional services, Engineer Smith Partners, our recorder, Amy Herbert, and those auditor and accountant. So moving across left to right, natural resource coordinator, that is staff Dick Howson. He is doing most of our WACA administration now. In fact, almost all of our WACA administration, any wetland work, and then he will administer the GIS program, meaning he'll work with Esri, he'll oversee education. Esri offers. Esri is Environmental Services Resources Incorporated, but they are the GIS, Geographic Information System software. And then he does our soil health administration and also oversees our Green Corps member. Communication manager is Staff Forbes. Water resources coordinator and fisheries manager is Staff Maxwell. Office manager is Staff Bockham. Natural resources technician 2, also known as our permit coordinator, that is Staff Nikolai. Community engagement coordinator, this is one of the changes in the org chart. This was formerly the education and outreach coordinator, but she will be taking on the cost share, all of the cost share programs, and this is Staff Mahan. Communication specialist is one of the positions we want to hire. Water resources technician specialist 1 is another position to be filled. And then the office assistant is the shared position with 9 Mile Creek Watershed District, and that is filled by Mr. Monahan. And then we have our interns that we get in the summer months. So those are the current positions as they are filled. So communication specialist was originally written as the grant coordinator. This position now will serve to help the entire communications program and not just administer the grants. And then the water resources technical specialist, I apologize, what's in there is an old job description. There's some language in there still about reporting to administrative blazer, et cetera. But I wanted to get something in front of the managers so at least they understood the type of duties that would be in there. We would update that job description prior to any advertising for it.
Okay, just if I could continue, Mr. President.
Manager Cook?
I think I understood everything, and so it's the communication specialist, correct? Water resources technical specialist 1 are the 2 proposed hires.
President Ziegler, Manager Cook, that is correct, yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood that. Okay. And what it did for the office assistant, when did that person start?
That person began in Staff Lockham, are you on here? I want to say that person began in June.
Correct, end of June.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments about the adopting the modified organization chart?
Oh, Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I'm not going to go into a full repeat, but I already made my comments regarding, I think, work that we need to, get done vis-a-vis website, et cetera. And I would hope that Administrator Jeffrey would work to make sure that among these people, especially including new hires, that we get that work done. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. So any other comments, questions? Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote on adopting resolution 23-057, modifying the organizational chart to reflect new allocation of staff responsibilities?
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen absent, President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Okay, the next item H here is discussion and potential acquisition of property located at 9955 and 9875 Spring Road, Eden Prairie, and property ID number 2811622320005. Board may go into closed session.
Mr. President, at this time, we'd recommend that you go into closed session for the purpose of considering terms of the potential acquisition of the property if identified and as identified in the agenda.
Okay,
Yep.
I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session.
President Ziegler? I'll move
Manager
that we-
Crafton.
Okay, I'll move that we go into closed session for the reasons you just stipulated.
President, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we need any discussion or can we go to a roll call vote?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook.
I wonder if we might take a short break if we approve going into closed session, a short break before we go into closed session. For the good of the order, I think they call it. AKA a bathroom break.
Okay, so what you're proposing is we vote to go into closed session and then we come back in 5 minutes?
Can you give me 5 or 7 minutes?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
President Ziegler?
Yes, Manager Crafton.
So Council Smith, is that the way we need to do this?
You can go into closed session and just take a break at the beginning of the closed session.
Okay, just checking.
Or an 8-minute break.
Yes.
Okay. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen absent, President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
All right, I will let in folks from the waiting room.
so President Ziegler,
Manager Crafton?
so we can go. Usually in a work vote on things, that's.
Point of order, Mr. President. Are we in open session now?
I believe we are in open session now. Yes.
Thank you.
And Manager Crafton's breaking up, so she seems to be frozen now.
Can you hear me?
I could hear that. Yeah. You're back.
Okay. Okay. Well, I didn't think I went anywhere. So when we're in a workshop, can we still vote to go into closed session, and can we vote and make decisions in a workshop, or do we have to have a special continuance before that?
No, I think we're continuing this meeting, so we can do all the same
Okay,
things we
okay.
could do in this
All right,
meeting.
okay.
We just
Thank you.
picked the date because it was convenient.
So, Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
on that note, I move that we adjourn this meeting and continue it at 6 p.m. on September 21st.
But President Ziegler,
Administrator Jeffrey?
and managers, that will be fine as long as we finish our other business beforehand. I know Mr. Pressman has an obligation at 6 p.m., but could attend at 7 p.m. I believe that's so.
Mr. President, I believe that still works. We have other items on the agenda that, we can finish, and if Mr. Pressman can join, that would be great. And I don't know if Mr. Elke can join us at that time.
I'll second the motion to continue the meeting to the 21st at 6 o'clock and continue with the agenda, and then have our closed session when the timing is appropriate. Do we have any other comments or questions about the continuation of the meeting? Mr. Smith, is that work for you?
Yes.
Okay.
Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen absent, President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Sorry for
Good night.
keeping you up so late.
Thank you.
Good night.
Past my bed.
Thanks, Mike and Eric. Appreciate you guys being here.
I just say thanks again to Michael and Alex. Appreciate your work.
It's our pleasure.
All right, take care, everyone.